Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Now To Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. Another great episode. This episode basically dealt with Betty dealing with the whole Black Hood situation, picking up where last week's episode left off with him calling her. And basically everything he's doing is for the purpose of getting her to basically ultimately to prove that they are the same, that basically is ultimately to get get Betty isolated from everyone, threatening to kill Polly because he knows exactly where she is, which at points made me go, is this really the Black Hood? But there's things throughout the episode that makes you think, okay, maybe that is the Black Hood, because Sheriff Keller got the code as well as the letter analyzed, and they're two different writing. They were written by two different people, so either someone's playing a game here, which immediately Alice thinks it's Betty, which is like, why would I do that? It's like, oh, maybe it's something you and Jughead do. Well, why would we do that? I don't know. It's like, I mean, it's so messed up that Alice does that. Like, she just, I guess because in her mind it's like, oh, you just happen to come across this and that. Oh, now a letter just happens to magically pop up you didn't want to tell us about. I wonder why. And the code was based on a book that you like. It's like, but why would Betty do that? Like, I guess in her mind she's thinking like Betty's like an attention seeker. It's like, why would Betty want attention? She doesn't want attention. Why would she do something like this? Has she ever done anything like that? At least within the confines of the show, she's never done anything like that. So what would make you think she would do that? But then again, it's just a situation of Alice constantly looking at the evil in people, like kind of seeing the worst of people and just going with that. You know, she doesn't see the best in people, which I guess you could argue that's kind of the difference between her and Fred, because last week's episode seemed like it was setting that up, like Fred kind of being like the more positive person, where she's the more cynical and negative person. I mean, ultimately the Hood wanted like it exposed, because I forgot about it. Like, she has a south side. I'm saying west side because the whole, like, in my head, the whole like comparison to kind of a West Side Story, Romeo and Juliet thing, especially with Jug and Betty, but I'll kind of get to that soon enough. But it's so, like, because we heard in the first season, especially like FP is like, oh yeah, she definitely has like a serpent connection, and they're just like, oh yeah, and even Betty calls her, I was like, what are you talking about? You spend so much time hating on the South Side, but that's where you came from and everything, and maybe that's just her argument. Maybe that can be like, hey, she's from that area, so she knows it well enough. She knows it's all bad people there because she was down that life before. But it's also messed up because it's like you changed your life, but now you're like. But it's almost like she holds a grudge against the South Side. Maybe it's just because her life was kind of hard when she lived in the South Side, and that's why she's just like, screw them all, essentially. I mean, because I remember a particular conversation back in season 1 that we dealt with a little bit. We've never gone back to it. I don't know if they ever planned to. It's a whole, like, her having an abortion when she was in high school, because her and Hal, like, she got pregnant, and ever since then she's regretted that decision. That was kind of a big problem between her and Hal last season, was that kind of coming back to the surface. Which it seems like Alice kind of took it in stride. It was just like, oh yeah, everyone's going to look at me, ha 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 ha. She didn't let it slow her down just because that's who Alice is. But like the reason why Betty did it was partially because, you know, she relies on Archie in this episode, because Archie's the only person she can tell about this whole situation. But Archie's kind of like, you have to do it because the Black Hood is telling you to do it. But also it's just because it's like, your mom kind of deserves it too. Just all the time she kind of writes hit pieces and calls people out and stuff like that. But ultimately, you know, for Betty, it was because she needed to do it, but also because it's like kind of a middle finger to her mom. Because I think that's what the Hood's trying to show her. It's like, like I said, we're not that different. You know, me making you do that wasn't for you, like, my sake or trying to stop me. It's like because you did it for your own sake, because you have issues with your own mom. So there's that. I mean, especially kind of, I mean, to be fair, you can kind of see where that similarity can come from, in a sense of Betty wants to do the right thing. She wants, you know, the truth to come out, kind of like Alice, but more Alice has like a distorted truth. She's like, she wants the truth to come out no matter how much it hurts someone. She wants to get the dirt. Like, it seems like she likes to warp a lot of stuff to fit her own narrative, you know, whether for her it's like, oh, I am seeking the truth, but, you know, she kind of has a tendency to twist things in a certain light, you know, contort the truth like a tad bit, you know, in shape or form. But also, like, going back to the whole dark Betty situation. So it's like, there's definitely a dark side to Betty, which I'm sure that's what the killer's tapping into. But once again, it's like, how much of this is like I mean, because how much of this is the really the Black Hood's motivations and how much it's just mind games? Because I mean, and it's really sad because you see it really all take a toll on Betty. Like she has to do what she did to her mom, messes up her relationship with Veronica because for her she kind of calls Veronica out. Because he kind of puts it in her head like, well, she's just like her dad. Oh, you think she's innocent of all the stuff that her dad does. But when you actually break it down, it's like, well, she is trying to get closer and be part of the family business and everything in this episode. But so a dude, Nicholas, from her past comes back and she starts acting differently. He even offers her drugs at one point, but he's like, oh, go and take a bump. And she's like, no. He's like, really? Veronica Lodge not taking a bump? That's a surprise. But it's kind of like, oh, didn't know you were like down for that, like drugs and stuff like that. It's like, because that's the thing, because we've heard Veronica talk a little bit about herself from back in the day before she got to Riverdale back in season 1, because that was always her thing when her and Betty bonded and became friends, because she realized she didn't want to be that person, because she used to be a lot like Cheryl. In fact, she was like, actually used to be worse than Cheryl. And so I think we kind of saw a little bit this episode, just the way she was acting. Like, she wasn't acting like the Veronica we've come to know. Just at first saying no to the jingle jangle, but then eventually taking it. I mean, to be fair, everyone took it, even Archie, even though he was against it at first. But it's like, oh, I think that was also out of a jealousy thing, because there was a little flirtation between Nick and Veronica, and I think that bothered Archie. But it's just like I said, she just wasn't acting like herself. But then ultimately, douchebag Nick kind of revealed himself, and it's like, oh, you're kind of a scumbag. But then he apologized. But then we realize how much of a scumbag he is, because he drugs Cheryl. It's like, God, you're such a scumbag. Because I was thinking the whole situation with Cheryl, I thought Cheryl kind of implanted herself in that situation, because this whole thing was meant to be like a Lodge situation, because like Lodge is trying to be in good with the St. Clairs with this whole like renovations and trying to get the capital, the money he needs to do it. So he needs backers, but obviously like with the whole like hit pieces that Alice puts out on Hiram, like bringing up stuff I've brought up too, like, is he doing this for the right reasons? Is he really doing this because he cares, or is he just profiting off all the chaos that's going down? Like I said, it's almost because he tried to play it like he's a victim. Like, oh, all this is just, oh, so many people are back to me. It's like, ultimately, that's what you're doing. You could try and hide it, but that's ultimately what you're trying to do. But if it wasn't for Veronica and the Pussycat showing up when they did, like, things could have taken a very dark route like that. And it's just like, because he tried to make it seem like, oh, I'm changing, Because I was wondering, I thought it was kind of interesting he didn't say anything to his parents, but more so than anything, because if he did say anything to his parents, he'd probably have to admit all the stuff he's done. And it's something Veronica kind of brought up. The fact of the matter is, because he's acting like this, the fact is he did that means he's probably done it before, and maybe she just never realized. Because for her, she back then was kind of a party girl. She was so caught up in being, oh, like Miss Richie Rich, so she didn't really care about other people. She had her little clique like Cheryl did. Once again, I bring that up. I think I brought that up earlier this season. Haven't seen her click in a long time. I can't remember. Did you ever see them in the later halves of season 1? I don't think you did. Like, after she kind of distanced them out of her life, you haven't really seen them. To be fair, it's not like we really see her at school much anyway. You just see her out and about. We haven't even seen, like, her really be at home in a while either. Like, I mean, that home dynamic between her and her mom, like, whether they're good or bad, even though, like, Cheryl kind of did a whole threatening her situation back in a premiere. Because ultimately what I was also curious about is what would this mean for the Lodge and St. Clair situation? Because ultimately I was wondering, like, would this information change anything? Like, would Hiram kind of show, like, I mean, because we see how Hiram is about protecting Veronica, but ultimately this would be a test of, like, where do you stand? Like, is a business proposition more important to you than your daughter? It's like, it seems like he cares about Veronica. He might manipulate and use other people to a certain degree. He even manipulates Veronica, but I think he does. Obviously, he does legitimately care about her. Obviously Hermione doesn't want him kind of like Veronica getting too mixed up in everything, but nevertheless, I'm just curious, like, what would have happened, because I was kind of halfway expecting him to twist things around, like actually having said something to his parents, but he didn't. He didn't lie and be like, oh, like, this and that. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe there was some truth to the whole him going into rehab and it not working out. Like him trying, but whatever the case may be, it's just like he eventually got to ultimate scumbag status and got the shit kicked out of him for it, which he deserved. I'm like glad they beat the crap out of him. Going back to what I was saying before, because I thought like, okay, this is the Lodgers trying to do that. I thought like the Blossoms were trying to do that. So I thought this whole thing with Cheryl doing was a manipulation or something. It's like, no, she was kind of kicking it with him and enjoying, like, I thought it was like, oh, maybe there's a budding romance here or something. But it's like, definitely not. Which is so interesting because kind of coincided with the whole like Betty situation. Like I said, Betty breaking down more and more because she had to separate herself from Veronica, her mom, as well as with Jughead too, because he wants her isolated because it's like, I want you to kind of realize truthfully who you are, without all these people around you who aren't really good, they're all bad people, like they're all sinners in a sense. So just like get rid of these people and just stay the pure Betty that you are. Even because the thing is, even Betty's got to think about the fact of the matter is she's crossed certain lines too, but this person hasn't really mentioned any of the lines that she's ever crossed before doing what she's done. But then again, what that might play into what I brought up earlier about the whole Dark Betty aspect, because everything she's ever did as Dark Betty was for justice, because that dealt with Ethel and the whole Jason and the whole book situation, basically like notches in people's belts type of thing. That whole situation last season, that's more what that was about. So maybe in the Hood's eyes, she's kind of a justice seeker, much like himself. That's why he's bonding so much with them. But once again, I don't feel like that's the entire story. I feel like there's more to it. That whole situation is just manipulation all on its own. Nevertheless, but it's the fact is that Betty couldn't even break up with Jughead herself. She sent Archie to do it, which sucks because at the same time you have Jug becoming more and more entwined with the serpents, actually trying to become a serpent, because it's something Tony pointed out. It's like, your dad was here, he kept the peace. Yeah, there are problems between North and South Side, but he kept people like Sweet Pea from doing stupid things like Sweet Pea's trying to do, and that's like build a pipe bomb and everything. So Jug is getting initiated. Archie shows up, and now, because not only is it a situation of North versus South, this situation is tearing apart lovers and friends. The whole situation, not surprisingly, has brought Tony and Jughead closer. Though you immediately notice it when she called him Juggy this episode. He looked at her almost like, wait, what? And you have her almost kind of looking away like she was kind of ashamed, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But it's like, so, because for Jughead, now because the thing is with Tony, he doesn't have to worry about it. He's a serpent and she accepts him as that. Like, he doesn't have to feel conflicted like he did with Betty because of like what it means. Like, he needs to be a serpent to make sure he protects the people from the North and keep peace. But at the same time, it's like for him, it feels like they're turning their backs on him without him really knowing the real reason, because Betty doesn't want anyone to know. So now eventually that's going to, like, Tony was like, oh, eventually you're going to look up. The only people you're going to have are the serpents because your North Side friends aren't going to be there for you. Now that's coming more and more true. I mean, him and Archie are still possibly okay, but there's still, that's going to be an issue going forward, because it's like, oh, Betty couldn't even tell me herself. She sent you to be the messenger boy. And so at least Jughead a little hurt, and now like him and Tony. But once again, Tony's not going to judge him. It's like, oh, you're a serpent? Yeah, I accept you for who you are. You don't have to change for me. You don't have to be anyone other than yourself. And maybe with Betty, he feels like he has to be someone else. That was a thing too, because it's like he felt like him and Betty were from different worlds. That was a aspect of the relationship he kind of dealt with last season. Maybe with Tony, it's like, oh, we fit in this same world. We're serpents through and through. So Jug did kind of get the crap beat out of him for the initiation, being jumped in, taking a brass knuckle to the face like that. So that was pretty rough. But then again, it's like Jug was right out coming off the whole Betty situation. So I'm sure he wanted to feel pain. So officially a serpent now. So I'm very interested to see what that means going forward, especially because it's like now Archie knows that. I wonder, did he actually tell Betty or not? Because it doesn't seem like Betty knows. But because it's such a heavy, like I said, it's a heavy situation because Betty's taking this responsibility all on her own. She's bearing that weight on her own, and she's sharing it with Archie, but even Archie is like, this is, especially after the whole situation of breaking up the Red Circle and kind of going back to normal life. Life isn't normal under these circumstances. His dad was like, I'm happy to have you back. Which, interestingly enough, we had Hermione and Fred in the same room talking to each other at that party this episode. I thought that was kind of interesting. That's like the first time they had any real interactions with each other subsequently since season 1. So I'm very curious to see what that's all about. Because, I mean, it's not like she's like, it's like oh, handling it in a business perspective. I'm just curious to see where that goes. We didn't go too deep into that whole situation. We just took a few steps in that direction. So, but obviously the biggest thing that came from this is the fact is that the Black Hood found out that Betty was actually secretly talking to Archie because she ended up learning a lot about the Black Hood. That's more reason why she's continuing to do with this, because she ended up finding out that the Black Hood is someone that she knows, plus the details she got from Archie, from when he attacked in the diner, as well as all the other ones, like from Moose and Mitch, about the whole situation. So all those details, she's trying to figure out who it is because it's someone that she knows. For them to know every aspect of her like that, to know when her mom and dad are away. So I'm so curious, like who it is and why do they have such a connection to her? I mean, is it really someone that has a connection to her? Is it someone just playing a role? I don't know. You don't think it's something crazy like it's actually her dad or something, do you? I don't think it is. It couldn't be, because I feel like she would have noticed, especially the whole eye thing. Not unless that was contacts or something, but it's like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's just me just throwing it out there. That's definitely a no, but I'm just throwing it out there anyway. So it might not be someone that we're familiar with. Maybe it's someone in her family. I don't know. Because it can't be someone that we've met so far in the show. It has to be someone that they're familiar with, that they know of, that we just, as the audience, don't know. I mean, considering everything that's going down, like, because for Betty too, it's like this situation is like, as long as I'm doing this, he's not killing anyone. But like I said, that's a lot for you as a kid, like a teenager, to handle that on your own. Like I said, it is taking its toll on her. She's breaking down like multiple times in this episode. Who would under those circumstances? Because it's like if I don't keep this up, innocent people are going to die, and it's going to be all my fault. She already blames herself anyway, because it's like, oh, the killer has taken such a fascination with me that basically every murder that's happened so far and every attack that's happened so far is because of me. So she already has that guilt on her shoulders, which I still think even Archie doesn't know about the letter per se. Maybe he does. I mean, the moment she gave it to Sheriff Keller, as well as her parents knowing about it, I don't know if they spread that information any more than they did. So Archie might not know, because that was a big thing last episode. She was hesitant to tell him because she didn't want Archie to hate her. But what was interesting is ultimately, and it's something I keep cutting to, and then I'm talking about, but then I kind of keep going on tangents. It's ultimately what she decides to do. Like, the Black Hood wants a name. Just give me a target. And she's like, I can't do that. I can't let someone die. And then she gives him Nick's name, because it's like, well, Nick's kind of a scumbag, what he tried to do for Cheryl. She's basically, she said herself, she wants him to burn in hell. And I guess for Betty, it's like, well, at the very least, maybe I can take advantage of this and get rid of a very, very bad dude. So we will ultimately have to wait and see like what comes about that. But the question is, how will Betty react to this situation? Will she be happy? Will she be sad? Because, I mean, there's easily a part of her that could be happy, because it's like, no, he was a scumbag. He's getting what he deserves. But at the same time, it's still a sad thing, because it's like you facilitated someone getting murdered. So it's like, that's kind of another thing that's going to like fall back on her, which I'm sure Archie amongst anyone could be like, yo, don't do that. You don't want that blood on your hands. It's like, he luckily had Veronica last episode to keep him from having blood on his hands. But I mean, it's like, you get so caught up in all of this, you take on this responsibility by yourself, like, because he's saying that he's not going to kill anyone because of this, but how can you truly believe that? I mean, yes, so far nothing's happened, but maybe, that's because it's all part of the plan. Once again, like, this is bigger than what's going on here. Like I said, I feel it that Betty's just a piece to a puzzle, in the sense of like, she's just the excuse that he's using for now, that there's a lot more to this at play. At this point, I'm not really sure, because we still don't have quite all the puzzle pieces lined up. So like I said, I'm curious to see what goes on in the next episode with all this, like Betty kind of keeping everyone at a distance. She and Veronica hadn't made up. And even though Betty was saying what she said to Veronica, I think maybe Veronica, like, they were in the same room near the end of the episode together during the whole Cheryl situation, but I don't know if they made up, but I think it's still something that maybe even Veronica can look back on and be like, yeah, I wasn't acting like I normally was, but still what Betty said was harsh. But I think Betty will still keep it up, just like the whole Jughead situation. And it's something Archie brought up too. It's like, you hope we can fix it. She's like, no, we can't. Like, no, you say you can, but you hope you can. But with the way things are, with this whole situation of you doing what you're doing, you might end up pushing Jughead a little too far. I mean, he's already in the arms of another lady, so it gets a little complicated there. So And if you keep pushing this far enough, like, you might not have any friends when it's all said and done. But it's like, ultimately, when they find out the truth, I'm curious to also see, like, whenever that eventually comes out, I doubt it will be Betty. It will most likely be Archie, who's like, yeah, Betty's pushing herself too hard. She's taking this all on her own. I gotta get the whole group together. We gotta keep it on a hush hush because, like, we can't let Betty know that we know or something like that because she's taking this all on herself. And it's just like, Archie's helping her in everything, but even that can only go so far because eventually she's going to want to keep Archie out of the loop, which she did this episode, but even more so now because the Black Hood knows that she's communicating with Archie, and so she's going to keep him at a distance to protect him as well as protect all of her friends and her family, so as well as just innocent people in Riverdale in general. So, also, a really quick side note, there's an interesting little moment I want to talk about, and that's the fact is that Hal and Hiram act like they know each other. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't remember anything in season 1 commenting on the fact is that they knew him. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, to be fair, like, Hermione is from Riverdale herself, so maybe Hiram is too, but it's just kind of an interesting thing that it was like oh, Hal, nice to see you. Oh, Hiram. Yeah. It's like, oh, where's Alice? Well, because of the whole, situation for a mugshot getting out there, I figured it'd be best for me just to be at the event. So I just thought that's kind of an interesting thing. Maybe that, it was just like a small thing, but maybe it's just insignificant. Maybe that was just set up to be like, yo, Alice is stepping in, doesn't care. It's like, you want to try and shut me down because I'm at mugshot being out? Don't worry about it. I'm still here. I'm not going to let that stop me. My past isn't going to stop me. Interestingly enough, she talks about it like she went through a lot to make sure that stayed buried. So I'm also curious to see how that will kind of affect her going forward amongst not just the people of Riverdale, even the mayor. Maybe the mayor won't even look at her in the same light because it's like, oh, you try to push me around, or Sheriff Keller, like, your credibility's out the window because of your past and everything. So, like I said, so many questions, a great episode, and I'm so interested to see where things go next episode. Like I said, as the divide grows bigger, not just with Riverdale, but with the people in Riverdale in particular, our main characters drifting further and further apart this season. Especially after building up these relationships and bonds season 1, of course, you kind of have to break them down in the next season. It's a situation where, much like Riverdale, when it's all said and done, they all might not be the same people when it's all said and done, so just something to kind of keep in mind. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live lights to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good